I am Professor Kevin Leander. I am faculty head of Memorial House in my second year here at Memorial House, sitting in the living room of Memorial House and looking forward to welcoming you to campus, and especially those of you who will be joining us here in the house. What is the role of the university today in relationship to the broader social world, and how do we understand that? I want to think about the university in a sort of contemporary context, and as we may look at the university with respect to its relevance as a place of learning. And I want to think in particular about this word place and a contrasting word, the word network, because I think both of these are words that are important to me, and they're important, I think, to the university and its development. So let's think first a little bit about place, the university as a place. I think the university as one of the things of interest for us is a university as a place, and I think this is a changing issue in American life, and actually in life more globally, is that universities are one of many places that people are learning. And so the university, in a sense, has come under a kind of competition, not just in the economic sense competition, but a competition for people's time as a site of learning. As we know from lots of studies of informal learning, that people have many opportunities to learn in many different contexts. And that informal learning has come under, has become a topic of a lot of interest in the learning sciences. And we know that people are selecting universities and college educations as as a kind of part of a long menu of learning opportunities. And so I just returned. I wanted to connect this talk just a little bit to a trip that I just made with my colleague Roger Hall from Teaching and Learning, and met with some people in Australia who are involved in the design of learning environments. So these people were were architects, educators, and Roger Hall and I come from a learning sciences perspective and thinking about the design of learning environments. And so this was an interesting meeting for us. It was supported by a Vanderbilt faculty travel grant, where we were able to go and talk to this group about possibilities of doing some work together, to think about how both for higher education and also K-12 schooling, learning environments may be changed to afford people new opportunities to learn, and maybe opportunities that engage a different kind of learning that is emerging and that is more possible and more broad than we've seen in the past. So one of the terms that people are beginning to use in the Australian context is how to make the university or the campus sticky. And I thought that was kind of an interesting term. How do we make it sticky? And the use of that term was deliberate or intentional, in the sense that they see that people have many more opportunities to learn than just being on campus. And the idea is, how do we keep people here? How do we keep people engaged to make this a community where the learning that should go on, that we want to see a kind of energy, is driven by people's self-interest and not just by some kind of authority or external constraint. And one of the ways that they're making campus sticky is through redesign, is through thinking about campuses being beautiful and being attuned to particular different styles of learning. So just to give you a little bit of a sense of that, I wanted to show you some pictures of the design of the Ormond Library on Melbourne University campus. This is one of the places that we toured as part of our conversations around the redesign of learning spaces. Just to show you a few images, in this first image you're going to see in the atrium of the library this is domed building with this beautiful natural light coming in and lots of natural materials, natural woods. I'm showing you the second image, which you notice quite a few of the visitors also that were part of our group, architects and designers and educators from different levels. But you see, along with natural materials, there's a lot of geometric design, and part of the idea here was picking up on sort of Islamic geometric traditions in the design of the building. So there was this harkening back to tradition. They even talked about how in the wood of the library, or the wood banister, that they wanted people to feel connected with history as they placed their hands on the banister. And so there was a sense of not just novelty, but also historical connection. You see in this image, where you see a large kind of open seating area, a combination of large social areas, small cluster areas. Let me see if I have a, oh, right here I thought was kind of a nice image to show you an image of a kitchen at the center of a library. And I think it's so unusual that we might see this kitchen, and I think this has two meanings. One is the kitchen, if we think of a kitchen as a kind of hearth of a home. Here you have a kitchen at the center of a learning space where people are learning and eating and sharing and also making things. So this is something we're seeing in different learning spaces, including the design of a learning space that we're working on at the Nashville Public Library, where this idea of making and learning are coming together in ways that we hadn't perceived before. So, and some forms of making are wet forms of making. They're sloppy, they're messy, they involve paint, and they involve different kinds of materials. And you see that, I'm not sure that you can paint at the Orman Library, but you see that there's a kind of sense of making also. And then you're seeing here in this image a private glassed room with developed technologies for small groups to meet and to work together collaboratively with supportive technologies. This was a design feature that we saw and also in some of the schools that we visited, that this sense that there are small group spaces, large group spaces, lecture halls, and then completely individualized spaces. The people that flow between these spaces is becoming characteristic of forms of learning where people have more choice and where different forms of learning require different kinds of social configurations. Here I'm just showing an image of a very large, high-quality wooden table. And I don't know what kind of wood this is. It's a beautiful table, and the wood in this table, one of the things that I remember the tour guide telling us about this table was that the students had reported that the materials that they worked on really made a difference for the feel of their own learning environments. And it may seem kind of trite or kind of literally at a surface level, but people report from their own experience, from an experiential perspective, that working on Formica and working on wood are very different experiences, and that these kinds of inspirations about what it is to learn in an environment, how people are connected to place, make a difference for them. And I think in these ways too, one of the things that inspired me, and I think it connects to Delbanco's book, is this sense that some of these puzzles and questions that we're asking, in my case as a person involved in learning science, some of these puzzles and questions are not simply addressed through scientific inquiry, or they're not simply addressed through one perspective on the world, but it's a coming together of different disciplines, in this case architecture, design, education science, and educational practice. And some of the questions and some of the answers end up being answers from art that we don't understand in any kind of scientific perspective, but they move us personally, they move us spiritually, and they move us forward in progress and in experimentation. And I think this table is kind of a nice example of that. We're not really sure why it works, but it seems to work and it seems to make a difference. The next sort of counterposition to this idea of place, the placeness of learning, or how our connections to place happen, and the stickiness of the university, is this idea of the network. And I was struck by, just as Delbanco sort of talks about, you know, particular places, for instance, he says here on page 38, says, "The hall, a great room with rushes strewn on the floor to be gathered up and burned from time to time as a means of controlling dirt, was the center of college life. It was in hall that dining, lectures, and sometimes musical and theatrical performances took place. At one end stood the high table where tutors dined in the company of the master, who, as the only college official permitted to marry, lived with his family in an attached house." So he's hearkening back to these sorts of places, these sense of places in the history of the college and the history of the university. In addition to that, though, he also kind of suggests this idea around what I'm calling a network. And he talks at the bottom of page 65 about Benjamin Franklin's friend, Benjamin Rush, who founded Dickinson College. And he says he founded it 100 miles west of Philadelphia in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, with a stipulation that it be built near a courthouse so that its students, as Dickinson's current president puts it, could make the short walk to observe government in action and become engaged with their society in order to prepare them to lead in it. And so I think that it kind of struck me as I was reading that, just as an example of what the university is important not for what it contains, but for what it's near. Or another way of putting the same idea is, what's important in a university is to not stay in it. What's important in a university is to leave the university or to build connections from the university to other places. And that we would be miseducating you if we kept you here on Vanderbilt campus and didn't develop for you a whole network of connections to other places. That what's important for us, particularly in the relevance of the university to the social world around it, particularly in this day, is that the university not become more cloistered or a better cloister, but the university become a better network, a better hub of activity, that it become a place for sending people out and for bringing people in, that it become challenged by these connections, and that in the vibrations with other kinds of places and other kinds of social activity, other forms of learning, that the university be transformed in those vibrations and those interconnections. And that, of course, you are part of that as well. As we see ourselves as a network of bringing you in, it's not to bring you in to contain you, but to bring you in because you are part of a network, that you are becoming more like us, and we are becoming more like you, are being challenged, being opened up by inviting you to be part of this and stretching our own boundaries and changing our own imagination of who we are. We've had a few minutes to talk about these ideas a few ideas about place and network and how they're changing and in some ways challenging the idea of the university. And one of the ways that you can see place and network are as two very contrasting visions. The place-basedness of education, I think, would be more consonant with the kind of vision that Delbanco is offering as a recovery of place. And network may seem like it's a threat to that or in tension with that. And a thought that I wanted to leave with is a sense that this is not that places and networks are not binaries, but places are conceived through networks, and networks emanate from places, and that this is part of the social life that we're building together. It's part of what we're welcoming you into. It's part of what I'm committed to as being emplaced here in the Commons, but also being someone very committed to helping you develop your networks, being someone who's committed to networking with other institutions and other social areas that see the university as a dynamic and ever-evolving place.